I know people personally that are on the cusp and still trying to figure out if they're actually going to vote for you or RFK Jr. And the reason why is because of his previous stance on the pandemic. There have been people that expressed that they're not sure where you stood before versus where you stand now, how you feel about how the pandemic was handled versus how you would handle something like that in the future. So can you go ahead and clarify that for people who may still be on that RFK train? Because like I said, there may not be a lot of people that are pro-genocide, but they're not worried about that stance of his because they believe that, that the world is going to be set up for something else like that to happen. And they want to know that there's going to be somebody that fights for them in New York specifically, or to this day, they're still embroiled in legal battles. Teachers trying to get their money, firefighters and police officers trying to get their money because of them being cut off from their jobs for not getting the jab. So can you clarify your stance then and what it would be going forward?
So as a medical doctor, you see medical advice change all the time and it evolves. So there was a time when I tried to keep up with the science on the COVID vaccine, and then I quickly discovered it's got to be a full-time proposition if you're really going to stay on top of the science. So my view, and I say I have never endorsed mandates. I've always held the position that people need to be persuaded. It's Orwellian to force people to take medicines or have things injected into their bodies. So that is my basic feeling, as a medical doctor, that we should not be in the business of mandating medical treatments. That said, we need good science, and we need science that is separated from big pharma, from medical institutions, from basically profiteering and health insurance and all that. We need a firewall between our regulators and industry. And what I have put out there from the start is that we need to bring back the independence of our regulatory institutions. We need a firewall between to basically stop the revolving door, because right now people are going from industry into regulation. And it's not just the FDA, it's also the EPA.
You mean Congress into the regulation industry, right? Or
Congress and also like our regulatory institutions. So it's both.
They're going into the actual private companies after. Got you.
Yeah. So like, you see Monsanto executives that are appointed to the Food and Drug Administration, and that's how we got GMOs approved. We got GMOs approved when one of the corporate vice presidents of Monsanto was at a head level in the FDA. And the same thing applies to the CDC, to the FAA, the federal airlines as well, because they, or look at the Sackler family, who basically wrote their own permissions for opioids. It's like, you can't keep up with this stuff. You can't keep up with the science of this stuff. We deserve to have the best of science and the best of community values. You cannot separate our community values. There is no like neutral science. Science, like reporting, you are bringing your soul as a reporter, you're bringing that to the table here. And if you are on the payroll for the insurance industry or big pharma, if you're on their payroll, that's a problem. Or if you are rotating between, a corporate position with Monsanto and being a reporter, your reporting is going to be extremely suspect. And the same is true for regulators. We shouldn't have regulators that are moving back and forth between industry and public service. And that is, to my mind, that is the answer here, because you can't just take one position and think that it's going to hold, like breast cancer and estrogens. I've seen that flip back and forth a million times over the last several decades. And you need to have people who don't have an investment in selling estrogens to evaluate the science and also to do the studies. So that is my overarching position. Number one, we don't do mandates, and a shutdown, a shutdown is outrageous. What Europe did when they were trying to get a handle on this was they provided payments to all the businesses that they wanted to pull back during the worst of their epidemic. They
same here in Brazil. Actually, that same thing happened in Brazil.
Yes.
That was actually one of the good things that Bolsonaro actually did here, was make sure that nobody starved. Because if you're going to force everybody to not work, you can't like pick and choose who gets paid in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't like taking hard and fast positions about what the advice should be about a vaccine or a certain kind of vaccine given a certain kind of epidemic. You know, there's just a lot of uncertainty. What I will say is that I do not support mandates. They're Orwellian and they should be avoided at all costs.
So basically what you're saying is, there's a lot of court cases going on right now. All those court cases where teachers were fired because their religious values weren't being respected. Teachers were fired because, or like, police officers and public service members were fired. Even nurses were fired without pay. Basically, you're saying that you would effectively take the side of those who are trying to seek compensation for being wrongfully fired for mandates that should have never existed.
That, yes. Now I haven't sat down and written a position, but just hearing that offhand, it seems like a no-brainer. That would be my.
Oh, there's a lot. It's almost too. It's one of those. It's like it's specifically happening in New York, and it's almost too much to keep up with. There's so many.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you look at like Jeremy Corbyn, he holds this position as well, that mandates should not be inflicted on workers. And I agree with Jeremy Corbyn, and the World Health Organization used to hold that position. I don't know where it stands now, but as the vaccine controversy evolved over the years, my feeling was increasingly that we need institutions we can trust. We do not have institutions that we can trust. And, we've just seen the revolving door spinning madly. And we also see money in politics, so that, important positions, are basically bought. And that is the fundamental problem. We have a system which is fundamentally corrupted. It is part of the Declaration of Independence that just power derives from consent of the governed. The governed no longer consent because this system has been bought out from under us.